Hello everyone, this is Judy Brice. I thought I would hop on here and give you a sort of a step-by-step way of how to choose a tutor. So there are lots of different tutors, and at the moment, and certainly at the moment, all tutoring it has to be online. We've not been allowed to teach in person for most of this last year. And for some people, like myself, I've gone into online. I went, over a year ago onto being fully online, and I'm not going back to in person. But some people are going back to in person at the point that they were allowed to, and the very earliest they're allowed to is the 12th of April. But as long as there lots of things are in place. So how to choose a tutor. And the first thing I always think about is what is it that you want to happen by having a tutor? And this might seem something that's pretty obvious, but actually there are lots and lots of reasons why somebody might be wanting to have a tutor. The most standard reason, which is number one on here, which is probably not the reason that you are wanting a tutor, and that is to prepare for a test or an exam. So, for example, that's somebody who's in year 11, they are finding their maths really hard, they've got to take GCSE in it, and they need GCSE maths tutoring for a few months. Even at this point in this kind of weird year, they might just be trying to have a tutor right now to try and get through those assessments, those teacher-led assessments. It could also be that you live in an area where there are 11 pluses and you really want your child to get into the grammar school. So that's, as I say, the most standard way of what reason for wanting a tutor is this very short term, and I mean that could be short term weeks, could be short term months, it could even be somebody who's going to have a year's worth of tutoring, but it's still pretty short term, and it's to prepare for an exam. As I say, probably the reason you're watching this is that actually you're not in that category. And if your child is neurodiverse, you are probably going to be wanting to have one of these 2, 3, or 4 long-term reasons for wanting to have a tutor. So one of them is that you're realizing that your child needs to be taught in a different way, and you want to understand more about how to help them learn. And they might be in school, you could be homeschooling them yourself, but you want to understand more of it. So by having a tutor on board for a period of time, you would be able to understand more about it and be able to help your child more yourself. Another one is another long-term reason, and this is to help them, and I use it in inverted commas, keep up with what's happening at school. So this could be, and I've had many children in this situation, they always just need that little bit of extra help. And with a bit of extra help once a week, they can keep on top of what's happening at school. If you think, oh yeah, they're doing really well now, and then you drop back and you stop doing the tutoring, it may be that they lose their confidence again. So that would be a long-term situation. And you could be for number 4, which is where you're homeschooling your child and you need the content being taught for the first time, and you're not particularly confident to teach that content yourself, and therefore you get a tutor in. So those are the 4 main reasons for wanting to have a tutor, but you need to kind of be clear in your head about why you want to have a tutor, but also what it is that you're hoping to get out of it. Because one of the things that often happens is a mismatch between what a tutor thinks they're providing and what a parent thinks they're going to get. And it's really important that you have some good conversations with the tutor, preferably before any tutoring actually starts to take place, where you both really manage each other's expectations. So there are parents who expect for their one hour a week, that you will teach them for that child, your child, for that hour for the week, but also provide multiple hours worth of work for them to do during the week. Now that's fine if that's what's agreed at the beginning, but this is where it's managing expectations, and the tutor needs to know that that's what the parent is wanting, and then would probably need to adjust their price accordingly, because obviously that's going to take a lot more work. It also depends on whether you're wanting a tutor to set homework, all that kind of thing. Sorry, that's my dog in the background making funny noises. Sorry about that. As you'll probably hear all the way through. Yeah, so it's like managing expectations of what you're expecting and what a tutor is able to provide. So let's click on. So not all tutors are equal. And this is the big thing. You can look for a tutor on price. Now, personally, I think if you are coming for any of these reasons for a tutor, price is not the thing that you need to compete on as to who you choose. Because if you're in the first category, and your child is pretty neurotypical and they just need some extra help for that exam, it comparatively doesn't really matter who tutors them, because as long as the person knows the content and is able to explain the content in a sort of standard kind of way, those children will be able to do that. I'm just going to have to stop the recording and let my dog out a moment. Right, that's my dog sorted. Sorry about that. Yeah, so a standard tutor for standard exam preparation doesn't really matter who it is. But if your child is neurodiverse, it really matters who they are. So don't try and compete on price, because there's always going to be somebody who will say they'll do it for cheaper, and they'll do it for cheaper and cheaper. And then there are even people out there who are saying they'll tutor your child for free. And a lot of people, that's very noble of them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you get a quality tutor. And if your child is neurodiverse, you really need to have a tutor who properly knows what they're doing. So these are some of the tips that I would say. So look for somebody who has QTS, that means qualified teacher status. Now, I am the first to admit there are some very good tutors out there who actually don't have this full QTS thing. There are people who maybe have been working as a TA, doing small intervention in school for many years. They really, really know what they're doing. And then they have also set up either part-time or full-time, like I do, as a tutor. So they wouldn't actually have QTS, but they are very experienced. So I need to put that as a caveat. There are people in that category. But generally speaking, you want to look for somebody who is a qualified teacher, has qualified teacher status. That means that they have done teacher training, they have a degree, they've done their teacher training, and they have also done 1 year on the job, and they've had to jump through enormous amount of hoops to come out with this fully qualified teacher status. So even if they've just done the teaching degree, they will be what's called an NQT, newly qualified teacher, and they won't be a fully qualified teacher. So don't look for somebody who's a recent graduate or a newly qualified teacher, as it's extremely unlikely that they will match and be a good tutor or the best optimum tutor for your neurodiverse child. Because to be brutally honest, they won't have had the experience yet, unless they, for example, had been working for many years as a TA in a school, and then they went back and did their teacher training. That kind of person is obviously going to tick all the right boxes, and they are going to be able to be a brilliant teacher and a brilliant tutor, because they've actually got both sides of it. But generally speaking, somebody quite young who's come from school to university, either onto a BEd the 3-year teaching degree, or they've done a 3-year degree and then the 1-year add-on for the PGCE. They will not have the experience that's needed to teach your neurodiverse child, because during teacher training, and it's changing all the time, and obviously I did mine a long time ago, but it's changing all the time. The point that you really understand neurodiverse children is when you have had a lot of different children come through your class over a period of years, and you're gradually building up your repertoire of understanding what makes them tick and how to help them best. If I look back to the first class I ever had over 20 years ago, and the amount of experience, the amount of teacher training I'd had about how to teach neurodiverse children was almost negligible. It was really just a name check of this is what learning difficulties are. And in that first year, did I help the I can think of one particular child in my class, Sam. Did I help him the best that if I was now to teach that child, that class now, I would be infinitely better at doing it than I was that first year. I mean, don't get me wrong, I tried blimmin' hard, and I think I did quite a good job. But you just don't have the background. So how do teachers then, who then turn into tutors, get the knowledge and experience? And it's only really over time. And so either with lots of on-the-job experience or doing training courses that are specifically aimed at neurodiverse training. So they could be like myself, having a go at, I'm currently doing training to be fully qualified in dyscalculia. So I'm doing a lot of, it's like a master's thing alongside my day job of my teaching, my studying. And even though I'd been doing this for a long time and I thought I knew an awful lot, well, I do know an awful lot about dyscalculia. Even me, I'm now doing this sort of just to formalize my experience. I'm still learning a lot of things that I even then didn't know. So you're looking for somebody who's done that kind of training course along. So it might be dyslexia, it might be, but they've done some kind of additional training. So that's that they're not all equal. So the next thing is to see, how do they tutor? Now, online tutoring, in my opinion, is here to stay. I mean, goodness knows how many more times we're going to be locked down and up again. I hate to think, but fingers crossed this is the last time. But what has happened in this last year is that online tutoring has become an acceptable way of teaching children. I had tried to go fully online previously to this last year, and people weren't prepared to do it because it was an unknown, and it seemed like it couldn't possibly be as good as teaching, in person. But what I found is that online tutoring can be as good, if not better, than in person, if, and it's a massive if, the tutor knows what they're doing. So if you find a tutor who is really confident in teaching online, they will probably be really good at it. And this point now, over a year into from when we first locked down, I would be very wary of a tutor who has not chosen in that whole time to go online. And that means that they have forgone their income for almost, their income for almost a year, which seems very, very short-sighted on my part. I believe that, they would have got to go, like myself, just over a year ago. This is here to stay. I've got to fully embrace this and really find out how to do this in the best possible way. And if the tutor doesn't have that mindset of trying to find a really good way of tutoring online, they're probably not the tutor for you. So some of the things to check that I've thought of to do this is to make sure that they use a video call. I need to be able to see my pupils and they need to be able to see me. Now, personally, I have 2 big monitors. They're in front of me, they're in there. And it means I have a massive, great big face of your child up on the one screen, whilst I'm working with them on the other screen. And that means I can see the micro facial twitches. So the point where the child is saying yes, but their face is saying no. Because I need to be able to respond to them really quickly. And it's not a case of me delivering a lesson in the same way as you would. And there is a subtle difference between a good teacher and a good tutor. So a good teacher is having to balance the needs of the whole class, and it's a massive juggling act all the way through the lesson. But roughly speaking, they have a script in effect in their head, and they deliver that lesson. Now, with tutoring, a good tutor is changing what they're doing almost by the millisecond as to how the child reacts to everything they say, they do, everything. So you have a pretty good idea where you're going with the lesson, and you've got all the resources already, but it will really depend on where the child takes it, how they respond to different things as to how the tutor would tutor. And I strongly believe that that can only happen if there is a video call as part of the lesson. So there are people who tutor, they send through some work, and then the child does it at the other end, and the tutor says, oh, can you what have you written on question 2 or something like that. Now, personally, for me, that is not making online better. That is just sort of migrating it over to, I'm not actually in the same room as you. So you want somebody who uses video call and they are able to react to your child the whole time. You also need them to be using what's called a virtual whiteboard. Now, the one that is built in on Zoom is absolutely rubbish, because in effect it's just writing over the top of what you can see. And then the moment you can't preload, the tutor can't preload any pictures or text or anything in, it's all just like handwritten over the top. Now, you want to see that a tutor is not just using the Zoom whiteboard. They need to be using a different whiteboard. And there are lots of these. So, for example, the one I use, and a lot of particularly maths tutors use, is a thing called bit paper, which I could sit here and talk about the wonders of bit paper forever because it's designed by tutors and it's brilliant. And so that is absolutely great. There, you can use OneNote, you can use Google Classrooms, you can use Google Meets. There are all sorts of other virtual whiteboards that allow, and there's Miro, that's another one that's proving to be really popular, particularly with English tutors. Although that wasn't designed for tutoring, it's designed for a corporate world. So they need to be using a virtual whiteboard that your child can also write and draw on. Personally, I like the ones, not just that they're sharing their screen through Zoom, but, excuse me, that the child is able to write on it at the same time. You want it that they can write on it at the same time. So, for example, with bit paper, I've got a mouse and I can write, I'm writing on the bit paper, and at exactly the same time, the child can be writing on the bit paper. So I can be doing something on one side of the paper, they can be doing something on the other side of the paper at exactly the same time. So, for example, Miro and bit paper do this very, very well. Excuse me. So you want a tutor that uses engaging techniques so that your child is not passive, because they're probably really very passive at school. They are being trained to sit there and be quiet and only answer when asked. That is how we have to, in order to cope with a class full of children. But for tutoring, it's really important that the tutor, it isn't about the tutor talking. The child needs to be really, really involved in it as well. My kind of rule of thumb is that I never go more than a minute. I don't think I'd go more than about 10 seconds sometimes, with between me talking at a child before they're doing things again. So we might be clicking and drawing and dragging and talking as we're, generally speaking, we're doing it as we're talking, as we're doing these things. So it's not a sit, listen to this, and then do a task, and the tutor just sits there and waits while you do it. You want a tutor where it's very, very engaging all the time. And if your child is neurodiverse, you particularly need this. You need a tutor who knows that they need to teach in a very visual and very practical way. So this will be probably using color coded, multiple colors of pens on the thing. So for example, I do a thing where, this particularly with older children, where the thing that we would write on the exam paper is in one color, and the bit that we do as our thinking is in another color. So it's very clear that you think this, you write this, you think this, then you write that. And that kind of thing where it's very color coded really, really works. You want to be having that where they're using practical resources. They're, actually things, your end. So they might have counters, they might have Cuisenaire rods, they might have cards with words on, if it's English, that kind of thing. They've got them actually your end, and the tutor's got the same, child's got the same, and they're actually touching and doing with things. So you want that very visual way of teaching. And the other thing is that you want the tutor to be using a touchscreen tablet, or like I do, I have this special pen. I can write on my graphics tablet, which means I can then write on the paper exactly the same as if I was writing with a normal pen. Because you want a tutor who is invested, and to be fair, it's only £35. They've invested in their technology. So they have got the technology that allows them to write. Because if you're trying to write with a mouse, it is almost impossible to write with a mouse of any quality. So for, somewhere between 30 and £50, the tutor has got something that they can write on the onto the screen. So that's the sort of things you're looking for. So you want it so that you feel that they get your child. I've got that in inverted commas, that they get them. Because sometimes people can talk at you about all these different learning difficulties, and you feel that they're just spouting things that they've read or that they think they should say. And you want to really feel that they properly understand where you're coming from. So you want to have a tutor that gets it and can start to understand about what makes them tick, particularly all the brilliant, wonderful things that your child is. So I really don't like to think of learning difficulties and somebody being learning disabled. And I know that that's the wording that medically people have to use in order to get certain funding. I like to think about learning differences, because if we teach a child who's got learning differences in the right way, they can still achieve. Inside every child is this little superhero, and it's all about finding that superhero and unlocking them, because there'll be things that will that they're brilliant at, and they're mad about animals. They're whatever it is, and there'll be things, they love drawing, they can do brilliant Lego, whatever it is. There will be something that's really good that they can do and they enjoy, because we want to tap into that. You want a tutor that taps into what makes them tick and works with that, rather than it, as I say here, about knocking square pegs into round holes. But it's about celebrating the differences and trying to work with the things that they love. They're obsessed with dinosaurs. The tutor needs to know that, understand why that's important to the child, and then work, use dinosaurs in the lessons, whatever it is, anything that helps draw and engage the child. So next thing is about asking for a video call to meet the tutor, and for them also to meet your child before you agree and sign up for the lessons. And I believe, I certainly am, and I believe that most tutors, professional tutors such as myself, are more than happy to have a quick video call with a potential parent to check that we're going to be a good match. So you know, I don't just have a thing, or you can just book a lesson here, you know, click here to book a lesson, because I need to know that what I can offer is what your child needs, and vice versa. So generally, you probably hit somewhere between 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes of a free video call, probably, where you have a chat with the tutor. They explain how they do everything, and hopefully it's sort of all along this sort of lines. And if they don't use these things, ask, you know, how do you write on the whiteboard? You know, that's a question. And you know, they say, oh yes, I use my graphics tablets, or I use my iPad with an Apple Pencil. You're understanding these things. So it's as much about you understanding them and them understanding you and everything. Then it's also often, if you're feeling quite confident in this, then you might want to call your child over and get them to just meet just for a minute. Just say, you know, Joshua, this is Judy, and she might be going to help you with some maths. And just get them just so that they meet the tutor just for a minute, because that will probably bring down their anxiety level, because they've actually seen the tutor. So rather than it just being sprung upon them that you're going to have a tutor and it starts tomorrow, they've actually met the tutor, and that really, really seems to help a lot. And the last thing in this bit is, don't be afraid to say no thanks if it doesn't feel quite right. You know, don't feel forced to sign up there and then to have any lessons. You know, feel free that it's okay to say, I'm not quite sure, I'm going to have a think about this. And then just say that, you know, you'll get back to them by whenever. Because, you know, sometimes it doesn't feel quite, it can also be that all of this is so brand new to you that it all feels big and scary and you don't really know what to do. In which case, you know, just give yourself some time to think it through and decide whether or not that is the right person. And it might be that you want to contact, say, 2 different tutors, and then once you have talked to both of them, make a decision. I don't personally think it's very fair to free trial lots and lots of tutors, because it's just wasting everybody's time. But certainly, if you have, you know, you've clicked through to their website, you've looked at various things, you've really got a feel for whether or not you think this person might be right for your child, and then you've had you know, a quick meet them. I mean, some people do this just on the telephone. Personally, I found that it works far better on a video call, because then I can see them, they can see me, and you know, I can potentially see the child, and most importantly, the child could potentially see me. But yeah, don't be afraid to say no if you don't feel it's quite the right fit. So the last thing is, good luck. And if you want any further advice, please just ask. And you know, I'm very happy to give you some more advice. You know, this is all about finding the right fit for your child. And you know, remember, you're probably one of these. Have a bit of a think about which of these things it is. And for some of you, it's going to be that you want somebody to help you because you've withdrawn your child and now you just need a bit of help with this. Thank you. You know, I need somebody alongside me to help me do this. And other people, you know, be these. And I would be surprised if any of you who are watching this are actually in this situation of preparing for a test. You are probably in this bit here. So very, very best of luck. If you would like any more help, please just message me, and you know, I'm here to help you to try and help your child. So thank you very much.